Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool. And Wera makes these Joker wrenches. These are the you can see that 6004, and then there's a designation of the size. This would be the small. Over here, here's another one. This would be the extra small. They make them from, this size here up to this size here. So if you look at that, that's the XXL. All the same number, but obviously massive difference in the size of the head and the handle length. But anyway, these are interesting. They're not cheap, and there is another version that you might have run into, especially in the auto parts store, that is made by PowerTorque, or at least branded PowerTorque. You can see the GM 47, get that in focus there, GM 4775. This is kind of a smaller version, similar to this Wera, so I'll compare these in a sec. And then here's the next size up. This one, 4776, is similar to this Wera. Now these use, and I'm saying Wera, some people say Wera because it's W, can be a German, I don't know. I've always called it Wera, so I'm going to keep doing that. But anyway, there are a little bit of differences, a few differences in kind of the operation of the way this moves in terms of the amount of motion and probably the mechanism, because this actually, on this PowerTorque, looks like with this sliding bar that it's more like a modified adjustable wrench versus whatever the camming mechanism is inside. And you can see, also the way this thing slides. This plastic plug here might be just covering that up, but that also gives you a little bit of indexing when you want to go in and manually fit it on versus try to wedge it on. But I'll show you that in a sec. I've tried a bunch of different wrenches. I've got lots of different Weras that I'm playing around with. These ratcheting wrenches are great. Here's the reversible one with the offset head. I think that's 15 degrees. And here's a flat one. You just flip it for the reversing. They have a unique mechanism on the front end where they use kind of a combination 6-point, 12-point design. The 12-point allows you to grab all kinds of things and have no trouble with it. The 6-point is to hold the fastener if you want by just rotating essentially one of those notches on the 12-point, and then it hooks. It catches, so the wrench doesn't slide down, and sometimes that can be helpful. Like if you've got a bolt here that's sticking up, if I'm trying to turn it, but I keep trying to turn it, but I keep slipping because this is falling through. I can also just rotate it a little bit, and now it's actually stuck on there. You can see because it's hitting this shield or this extra 6-point mechanism that they've stuck in there that just barely sticks out. So you got best of both worlds. Anyway, I digress. So let's go back to these things. I'm going to compare the small Wera to this small PowerTorque. The price, I can't remember. I got this quite a while ago, thinking I'd just jump on a video, but then just never got around to it. Picked these up at an auto parts store for, they couldn't have been much more than 10, 15 bucks a piece, which compared to these, I haven't looked these up recently, but let me just say they're more than $10 or $15. They're not ridiculous Snap-on, but they are actually they're not an impulse buy. Let me put it that way. So anyway, what you're able to do is that once you grab something, let me do it on this flatter one here, grab it, is you can then get a camming motion, which is quite reminiscent, it stays on, of a kind of like using a ratchet with a fairly large swing. That's when it pops down. That's what it's good for. As far as the overall strength, I assume it has the same limitations pretty much as an adjustable wrench, which means it'll probably take quite a bit of torque given the handle size. So if you feel like you need to, put two hands on it or put on gloves or put a pipe over it or something, you're probably exceeding what these things can do. Now this one, the inexpensive one, the PowerTorque here, once they're on, they feel quite much the same. There's nothing really that stands out except maybe a little of the handle feel. There we go. Do it this way on this guy. The rotation is about the same because basically you've got to go to another facet on the fastener. That's what's dictating the rotational arc there. So if you put on something that had 12 points, you know, you've just cut the swing arm in half. As far as the blades, the jaws, the Wera is narrower here. You can see it's narrower all the way around. If you look at this rotation, the Wera rotates much further than the PowerTorque, as you see. And the angle, the initial start angle, is quite a bit different. So you can see that. So they are different that way. I like the feel of the Wera. This I figured was going to be awkward or odd or clunky or mechanical or something like that. But in reality, I'm not noticing a whole lot of difference, actually, once you get it onto the fastener. This also, the Wera has little kind of cutouts on the top which allow you to grab something right at the tip. Since there essentially is no gripping surface other than the parallel smooth surfaces on the inside of the wrench. But that allows you to work up at the tip. That might be helpful because the tip is actually longer. If you look, you do it this way here, you can see that the Wera is actually longer. I line up the bases by a little bit. But if you try to grab with the tips on this, there's a good chance you're going to slip. And if there's not enough room to maybe get the wrench fully seated up against the fastener there, then you might have a little bit of trouble remaining purchased to the fastener. I found the same thing with the little bit bigger ones, so I assume that is just inherent in these. If you're interested in this kind of a wrench, this may actually serve your purpose. Inexpensive design, get you going on it. This is definitely a much smoother, much nicer finished handle. I like the little bit of a swell here. This is basically just a flat bar. It is rounded. Both have a way to hang the wrench. Weight, regular feels about the same. But this rotation here, this is just, it's a much finer mechanism than this. So, you know, you're paying for a little bit more refinement with the Wera. As far as grabbing things, you got smooth steel, so that's pretty similar. As far as the camming mechanism, my guess is that because this is a greater movement in a smaller area, that it might not be quite as strong as kind of a more subtle movement, where you could get something a little bit more refined and snug. That's just a guess. The mechanisms, I don't know. My guess also there is that maybe the spring is cheaper in this, so you know it does kind of feel a little less springy, a little less smooth in the operation, a little more clunky, but hey, it's like a third the price, maybe a quarter the price. But anyway, thought I'd show you those two. It's fun to play with, and for those who might recognize this, I used to, long before I got into the American-made tools, I was into the Italian tools, like this, made in Italy. I love these things. I have a bunch of them. No use for them really much anymore. There's a 15mm, also known as a peanut butter wrench, because you could eat peanut butter with it right out of the jar. If you don't know about that, well, there's a history lesson for you. Anyway, with that, Doc out.